Kalen had searched through 300 stations in the past 6 months. His fingers were tired from typing the same name into immigration databases across the galaxy. Alina Vance. Human. Retired. No special classification. Every search gave him the same useless result. The woman existed somewhere, but she was impossible to find. She had no active communication address. She owned no property under her name. She received no government benefits. For someone who had once been the most famous human in galactic history, she'd done an excellent job of disappearing. Kalen rubbed his purple eyes and leaned back in his chair. The search terminal in front of him glowed with another failed result. Station Kepler 9 had no record of Alina Vance in the past 20 years. He crossed it off his list and moved to the next station. His people did not have much time left. The Dominion Collective had already taken 40 systems in the past year. Their warships moved through space like a disease, consuming everything in their path. The Valorian homeworld was one of the last free planets in the outer regions. But everyone knew that freedom would not last much longer. The Galactic Council had tried everything. They sent their best diplomats. They offered territory. They offered resources. They offered complete surrender of their military forces. The Dominion refused every offer. They did not want peace. They wanted justice, they said. Justice for centuries of being treated as lesser species by the Council and its members. Kalen understood their anger. His own people had suffered under Council policies for generations. But understanding their anger did not stop their weapons. Understanding did not bring back the billions who had already died. That was why the Council had sent him on this impossible mission. Somewhere in their historical archives, they had found a name. Alina Vance, the Peacemaker. The woman who had ended the 17 Systems War 50 years ago through methods that no one fully understood. The records were incomplete. The witnesses were mostly dead. But the result was undeniable. She had stopped a war that had killed more beings than any conflict in galactic history. If anyone could stop the Dominion, the Council believed it was her. But first, Kalen had to find her. He typed in another station name. Station Meridians. 7. A small trading post at the edge of known space. Nobody important lived there. Nobody important visited there. It was the kind of place where people went to be forgotten. The search result appeared on his screen. His heart stopped beating for a moment. Alina Vance, human, age 89, current resident, occupation, repair technician. Cal stared at the words. After 6 months of searching, he had finally found her. The legendary Peacemaker was living on a forgotten station fixing broken machines for a living. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. He booked the next transport to Meridian-7. The station was exactly as miserable as he had expected. The corridors were narrow and poorly lit. The air recyclers made strange noises. The few residents he passed looked tired and hopeless. This was not a place where legends lived. This was a place where people came to die quietly. Kalen found the repair shop in the lower levels. A small sign above the door said Vance Repairs in faded letters. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The shop was cluttered with broken equipment and spare parts. Tools hung from the walls. A workbench dominated the center of the room, covered with half-finished projects. And behind that workbench stood an old human woman. Her hair was completely silver. Her face was lined with deep wrinkles. Her hands were rough and stained with machine oil. She wore simple work clothes that had been patched many times. She looked up at Kalen with eyes that were still sharp despite her age. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was calm and tired. Kalen felt his throat tighten. This was her. This was the woman who had ended wars. This was the legend who had saved billions of lives. And she looked like any other old person waiting for death. "Admiral Alina Vance," he asked. Something flickered in her eyes. Something cold and distant. "I haven't been an admiral for 50 years. Just Alina now. What do you want?" "My name is Kalen. I'm a diplomatic aide for the Galactic Council. I've been searching for you for 6 months." Alina set down the tool she was holding. She studied him with those sharp eyes. "The Council sent you. They must be desperate." What do they want? They want you to help us stop a war, Alina laughed. It was not a happy sound. They want me to stop a war. That's funny. Tell me, Kaylin, do they teach anything about me in their schools? Do they remember what I did? Of course, you're the peacemaker. You ended the 17 Systems War. You saved the galaxy. I ended a war, Alina said quietly. I didn't save anything, and I paid a price that none of your history books talk about. She picked up her tool again and turned back to her work. Go home, Kaylin. Tell the council that Alina Vance died a long time ago. There's no legend here, just an old woman who fixes machines. Please, Kaylin said. His voice cracked with desperation. The Dominion has already destroyed half the outer systems. They're coming for my homeworld next. Billions of people will die. Children will die. You're the only one who has ever stopped something like this. Elena's hands paused over her work. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then she said very softly, that woman you're looking for doesn't exist anymore. I'm sorry. Before Kaylin could respond, a sound filled the shop. An emergency broadcast transmitted on all frequencies. Every screen in the station flickered to life with the same terrible message. Attention, all citizens. The Dominion Collective has launched a full assault on the Valorian system. Orbital defenses have fallen. Ground invasion is imminent. All Valorian nationals are advised to contact their embassies immediately. Kaylin felt his legs give out beneath him. He collapsed against the wall, his heart pounding with a pain that went beyond physical. His family was there. His friends were there. Everyone he had ever known and loved was on that planet, and now they were going to die. Alina watched him fall. She watched the young alien's face twist with grief that needed no translation. She had seen that expression before, 50 years ago, on 1,000 different faces. The face of someone watching their entire world end. Something stirred inside her. Something she had buried deep and sworn never to touch again. She thought of the promises she had made to herself. She thought of the price she had already paid. She thought of all the reasons why she should stay silent and let this young fool find someone else. But she also thought of the children. There were always children. Kaylin, she said quietly, look at me. He raised his tear-filled eyes to meet hers. I can't promise I'll save anyone, Alina said. I can't promise I'll make any difference at all, but I'll try. She walked to the back of her shop and opened a hidden panel in the wall. Inside hung an old uniform, preserved but covered in dust. The uniform of an admiral in the Galactic Fleet. She had not touched it in 50 years. Alina pulled it out, held it against her chest. The weight of it brought back memories she had tried to forget. The weight of all those lives. The weight of everything she had sacrificed. I'll try, she whispered again. Was the legend who ended wars, now she's just a name in the Registry Part 2, the weight of legends? Alina held the old uniform in her hands and let the memories wash over her. 50 years had passed since she last wore these clothes. 50 years since she walked away from everything she had been. But the fabric still smelled faintly of starship corridors and recycled air. It still carried the weight of 1,000,000 decisions that had changed the course of history. Kaylin watched her from across the room. His tears had stopped, but his purple eyes were still red with grief. He did not understand what he was asking of her. He could not understand. The history books told a simple story about a brilliant diplomat who ended a terrible war. They did not tell the truth. You should know something, Alina said quietly. Before we go any further, you should know what I really did. I know what you did, Kaylin replied. You negotiated the Treaty of 17 Stars. You brought peace to 100 worlds. Lena shook her head. That's what the books say. That's not what happened. She sat down on her workbench and gestured for Kaylin to sit as well. Let me tell you a story. A true story that no archive contains. Young Valorian sat down slowly. His body was tense with urgency. Every moment they wasted was a moment his people were dying. But something in Elena's voice told him he needed to hear this. The 17 Systems War lasted for 30 years, Elena began. By the time I became involved, over 40 billion beings had died. The war had no purpose anymore. Nobody remembered why it started. Both sides simply hated each other too much to stop fighting. Every peace negotiation failed. Every treaty was broken within months. The diplomats had given up. She paused, her eyes distant. I was just a captain then. My ship was assigned to protect a refugee convoy near the front lines. We were attacked by enemy forces. My ship was destroyed. I was captured along with 200 survivors from my crew. Kalen listened in silence. This was not in any history he had ever read. The enemy treated prisoners badly. Very badly. I won't describe what they did to us, but I survived. And during those months of captivity, I learned something important. I learned that the enemy soldiers were not monsters. They were just people. Scared people who had lost too much. People who had been taught to hate us because hating was easier than grieving. Elena's voice grew softer. I started talking to them. Not as a prisoner to a guard, just as one person to another. I asked about their families, their homes, their dreams. And slowly, some of them started talking back. They told me about the things our side had done to their worlds. Things that were not in our history books either. What things? Kalen asked. Terrible things. Attacks on civilian stations. Biological weapons deployed on farming planets. Children burned alive in their schools. Our leaders had committed the same crimes we accused the enemy of committing. The war was not good against evil. It was just pain creating more pain forever. Alina stood up and walked to the small window of her shop. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. I realized that peace would never come through negotiation. Both sides wanted justice. Both sides wanted the other to admit wrongdoing. And neither side was willing to go first. So what did you do? Kalen asked. Alina turned to face him. Her expression was heavy with an old sorrow. I offered myself as a guarantee. I told both sides that I would live among the enemy as a permanent hostage. If either side broke the peace, they could execute me. I made myself the price of the treaty. Kellen's eyes widened. You gave yourself as a hostage? For 15 years, Alina said. I lived in enemy territory. I could not contact my family. I could not return home. I watched through screens as my daughter grew up without me. I watched my husband grow old alone. I watched my mother die without being able to hold her hand. The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Kalen felt a deep shame rising in his chest. He had come here expecting a hero. He had found something else entirely. The treaty held, Alina continued. Year after year it held. Both sides learned to live together. New generations grew up without knowing war. And eventually the need for a hostage ended. They released me. She laughed bitterly. By then, I had nothing to return to. My husband had remarried. My daughter did not recognize me. The military gave me a medal and a pension and told me to enjoy my retirement. That's why you disappeared, Kalen said softly. I did not disappear. The galaxy simply forgot about me. They remembered the treaty. They remembered the peace. But they did not want to remember the price. They wanted a legend, not a broken old woman who had sacrificed everything and received nothing in return. Alina walked toward Kalen and placed her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was surprisingly gentle. This is what you are asking me to do again. You are asking me to give up whatever small life I have built here. You are asking me to face another war, another impossible situation. And I need you to understand that I may fail. I am not the woman I was 50 years ago. I am tired. I am old. And I am afraid. Kalen looked into her eyes. He saw the fear she spoke of, but he also saw something else. A tiny spark of light that had never completely died. My people are being slaughtered right now, he said. Children are dying while we sit here and talk about the past. I cannot promise you anything. I cannot give you back the years you lost. All I can do is ask, please, help us. Not as a legend, not as the peacemaker. Just as a person who knows what it means to suffer, please. Lena held his gaze for a long moment. She thought about all the reasons to refuse. She thought about the quiet death she had planned for herself in this forgotten place. She thought about the peace she had finally found after decades of pain. But then she thought about the children. She always thought about the children. "The Dominion is not like the enemy I faced before," she said finally. "I have read about them. They are not fighting for territory or resources. They are fighting because the galaxy broke its promises to them. They were supposed to be treated as equals after the last war. Instead, they were pushed to the edges and ignored. Their anger is justified. So there's no hope?" Kaylin asked. "I didn't say that." Alina moved to her storage closet and began pulling out old data chips and documents. Justified anger can be addressed. Enemies who believe they are fighting for justice can be reached. But it requires something that no one in the council is willing to give. What? Honesty, accountability. Someone has to admit that the Dominion's grievances are real. Someone has to apologize for the promises that were broken. Lena looked at Kaylin with something like hope in her eyes. "That is how I ended the last war. Not through clever diplomacy. Through truth. Through being willing to take responsibility for the sins of my own people." She handed him a data chip. "These are my old communication codes. Some of them might still work. If we can contact the Dominion directly without the Council's interference, we might have a chance." Kaylin took the chip with trembling hands. "You're really going to help us?" Alina pulled the old uniform over her shoulders. It was too big for her now. 50 years had shrunk her body, but the metals still gleamed in the dim light. "I'm going to try," she said. "That's all I've ever done. Try." She walked to the door of her shop and looked back at the life she was leaving behind. The broken machines, the quiet days, the peaceful anonymity. It had been a good ending. A gentle ending. But endings, she had learned, were not always within our control. "Come," she said to Kaylin. "We have a war to stop." She was the legend who ended wars. Now she's just a name in the Registry Part 3. The Forgotten Protocol, the Galactic Council. Headquarters was exactly as Alina remembered it. The same towering halls of white stone, the same flags of 1,000-member species hanging from the ceiling, the same smell of importance and power that filled every corridor. 50 years had changed nothing about this place, but everything else had changed. The faces were different now. The leaders who had known her were dead or retired. The young officials who hurried past her did not recognize the old human woman in the outdated uniform. To them, she was nobody. Just another visitor in a building full of visitors. Kaylin walked beside her, his identification badge giving them access to the inner chambers. He had contacted the council during their journey, informed them that he had found Alina Vance. Their response had been polite but unenthusiastic. They would grant her an audience. Nothing more. "They don't seem very excited to see you," Kaylin observed quietly. "They don't remember me," Alina replied. "Not really. They remember a name in their history files, a story they learned in school. But I'm just an old woman to them." Old women don't win wars. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central speaking platform. Representatives from hundreds of species filled those seats, their faces displaying various shades of impatience and skepticism. At the highest tier sat the council premiers, 7 most powerful leaders in the galaxy. Alina walked to the central platform and looked up at them. She felt very small. She felt very old. But she had stood in this same spot 50 years ago, and she had changed the course of history. Perhaps she could do it again. "Honored representatives," she began. Her voice was steady despite her nervousness. "I am Alina Vance. Some of you may know my name from your history studies. I ended the 17 Systems War through diplomatic means. I am here because I believe I can help end the current conflict with the Dominion Collective." A Tellurian premier leaned forward, his blue skin wrinkled with doubt. "We appreciate your service to the galaxy, Admiral Vance, but that war ended 50 years ago. The situation with the Dominion is entirely different. They are not interested in peace. With respect, Premier, they are very interested in peace. They are just not interested in the kind of peace you are offering. Explain yourself." Alina took a deep breath. "I have studied the Dominion's statements, their demands, their grievances. They are not fighting for territory or resources. They are fighting because the galaxy promised them equality after the last war and never delivered. They were supposed to be given representation in this council. They were supposed to receive development aid for their damaged worlds. They were supposed to be treated as partners, not subjects. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Those promises were made by previous administrations, another premier said. We cannot be held responsible for decisions made before our time. With respect, Premier, that is exactly what the Dominion hears. Generation after generation of council leaders saying that the past is not their responsibility. Meanwhile, their people continue to suffer. Their worlds continue to struggle, and their anger continues to grow. The premiers exchanged glances. A Vorthan premier spoke next, her voice cold. What do you propose, Admiral? That we simply give them everything they want? I propose that we give them what they deserve. An honest acknowledgement of past failures, a genuine apology for broken promises, and a real commitment to change. Lena paused. I know this is difficult. I know it goes against everything your political training has taught you. But I have ended wars before. This is how it's done. Not through strength or clever negotiation. Through truth. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, the premiers began to laugh. Not all of them, but enough. The Tellurian premier shook his head with amusement. Admiral Vance, we respect your history of service. But the galaxy has changed since your time. Apologizing to an enemy is seen as weakness. If we admit fault, the Dominion will simply demand more, and other species will see us as vulnerable. We cannot govern through apologies. You cannot govern at all if the Dominion burns your worlds, Alina replied sharply. The laughter stopped. The premiers stared at her with cold eyes. We have considered your input, the Vorthan premier said. The Council has already decided on a different approach. We are increasing military production. We are forming defensive alliances. We will defeat the Dominion through force if necessary. That approach failed in the 17 Systems War. It will fail again, then it fails. But at least we will have fought with dignity, not groveled for peace. The premier waved her hand dismissively. Thank you for your time, Admiral. An escort will show you out. Lena stood frozen on the platform. She had known this might happen. She had known that pride was a stronger force than wisdom. But hearing the words spoken so casually, so confidently, still hurt. Kalen appeared at her side. What do we do now? He whispered. Alina looked at the representatives filing out of the chamber. So many species, so many lives hanging in the balance. And the leaders responsible for those lives were too proud to try something different. We do what I should have done from the beginning, Alina said quietly. We go around them. She led Kalen out of the chamber and into a quiet corridor. From her pocket, she pulled the old data chip she had brought from her shop. These communication codes are from the 17 Systems War. They were used for secret, diplomatic contacts between enemies, emergency channels that bypassed official governments. She inserted the chip into a nearby terminal. The Dominion's leadership includes species that were involved in that war. If any of them remember these codes, they might still be monitoring them. You're going to contact the Dominion directly? Kalen asked. Without Council permission? The Council just refused to help your people. Do you want to wait for their permission while the Dominion conquers more worlds? Kalen hesitated for only a moment. Then he nodded. Alina entered a sequence of codes that she had not used in 50 years. The terminal hummed as it searched for a connection. Seconds passed, then minutes. Alina began to lose hope. Then a voice came through the speaker. Deep and resonant and filled with surprise. This channel has been silent for 5 decades. Who is using the old protocols? Alina leaned toward the microphone. My name is Alina Vance. I was called the Peacemaker once. I am hoping to speak with someone in the Dominion leadership about ending this war. A silence. Long, terrible silence. Then the voice spoke again. Alina Vance. Yes, we know that name. We have been wondering if you would come, you know me? We know of you. Stories of the human who gave herself to stop the killing. Stories passed down through generations. My grandmother survived the 17 Systems War because of you. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. Then you understand what I'm trying to do. I understand. But understanding is not the same as trusting. The Council has broken too many promises. Words mean nothing anymore. I know. That is why I am not offering words. I am offering myself. Lena took a deep breath. I will come to Dominion space. Alone, unarmed, as a sign that at least one person in this galaxy still believes peace is possible. Kaylin grabbed her arm. Alina, no. They'll kill you. She looked at him with gentle eyes. Perhaps. Or perhaps they will listen. Either way, it's better than waiting for more children to die. The voice on the terminal was quiet for a long moment. Then it said, Come, Alina Vance. Come and see the damage your galaxy has done. Come and tell us why we should believe anything you say. I will. Give me the coordinates. The terminal beeped as a location appeared on the screen. Deep in Dominion territory? Far from any help, Alina memorized the coordinates and deleted them from the terminal. She turned to Kaylin. Stay here. Tell the council what I'm doing. Maybe when they see that someone is willing to take risks for peace, they will find their own courage. I'm coming with you, Kaylin said. No, your people need you alive. I'm old. I have less to lose. My people are already dying. If there's even a small chance this works, I want to be part of it. Kaylin stood straight, trying to look brave despite his fear. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed. Alina looked at this young alien who had dragged her out of retirement. He was foolish. He was naive. He reminded her of herself 50 years ago. All right, she said. But if things go wrong, you run. Understood? Understood. They walked toward the shuttle bay, leaving the council and its pride behind them. She was the legend who ended wars. Now she's just a name in the Registry Part 4. The bridge no one else would cross the shuttle was small and old. Alina had purchased it with the last of her savings, a battered transport that barely passed safety inspections. It was not a ship fit for a legendary diplomat. But then, Alina had stopped being a legend long ago. Kaylin sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the navigation screen as they approached Dominion space. His hands were shaking slightly. He had never been this close to enemy territory before. Every story he had heard about the Dominion spoke of their ruthlessness, their hatred for council species, their willingness to destroy anyone who threatened them, and they were flying directly into the heart of that hatred. You're scared, Alina observed. Yes, Kaylin admitted. Aren't you? Terrified. Lena smiled faintly. But fear is not a reason to stop. Fear just means we understand what we're risking. A warning light flashed on the console. They had crossed the border into Dominion territory. Almost immediately, a signal came through the communication system. Unidentified vessel. You have entered Dominion space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Lena keyed the microphone. This is Alina Vance. I was invited by your leadership through the old protocols. I am here alone with one companion. We carry no weapons. A long pause. Then the voice returned, slightly less hostile. Alina Vance, you are expected. Proceed to the following coordinates. Any deviation from your course will result in immediate termination. New coordinates appeared on the navigation screen. Alina entered them without hesitation. The journey took another 6 hours. They passed destroyed stations and burned out ships floating in the void, remnants of battles fought and won by the Dominion. They passed enormous warships that dwarfed their little shuttle, weapons arrays tracking their movement. At any moment, Alina knew they could be vaporized without warning. But they were not attacked. They were allowed to pass. Finally, they reached their destination. A massive space station, unlike anything Alina had seen before. It was built from the hulls of 100 different ships, welded together into a sprawling structure that seemed to grow in every direction. Lights flickered in thousands of windows. Smaller vessels moved around it like insects around a hive. This is their capital, Kaylin whispered. The heart of the Dominion. Lena guided the shuttle into a docking bay. Armed guards were waiting for them, soldiers from a dozen different species, all wearing the black and red uniform of the Dominion military. They did not look friendly. The shuttle door opened. Alina stepped out first, her hands visible and empty. Kaylin followed close behind. A tall figure pushed through the guards. He was Cathroni, a species known for their physical strength and short tempers. But his eyes were not angry. They were curious. Lena Vance, he said. I am Supreme Commander Vorath. I am the one who answered your call. Thank you for receiving me, Elena replied. Vorath studied her face. You are older than I expected. The stories made you sound immortal. Stories always exaggerate. I'm just a tired old human who has seen too much war. Something flickered in Vorath's expression. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. Come, we have much to discuss. He led them through the station's corridors. Every species they passed stopped to stare at Alina. Some whispered to each other. Others simply watched in silence. The name Alina Vance clearly meant something here. They entered a large chamber that served as Vorath's command center. Screens covered the walls, displaying maps and battle reports and casualty numbers. Alina looked at those numbers and felt sick. So many dead, on both sides. You asked to speak with me about peace, Vorath said. So speak. Alina gathered her thoughts. I know why you're fighting. I know about the broken promises. The territories that were supposed to be returned, the representation that was supposed to be granted, the aid that never arrived. You're not fighting for conquest. You're fighting for justice. Vorath's expression did not change. You know this. The Council knows this. Everyone knows this. And yet nothing changes. I want to change it. How? You are one old woman. The Council has already refused to negotiate. What can you possibly do? Alina stepped closer to him. I can tell the truth. Publicly. To everyone. I can stand before the galaxy and acknowledge that the Dominion's grievances are real. I can admit that the Council broke its promises. I can apologize for the suffering that has been caused. Vorath laughed bitterly. Words, you offer us words. We have heard words before. They mean nothing. Then let me offer something else. Alina took a deep breath. Let me stay here, in Dominion space, as a guarantee that the peace will hold. If the Council breaks any new agreement, you can execute me. Just as I did 50 years ago. The chamber went silent. Vorath stared at her with something like shock. You would give yourself as a hostage? Again, if that's what it takes. Vorath shook his head slowly. You are either the bravest person I have ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both, Alina admitted. The Supreme Commander turned away from her. He walked to one of the screens and stared at the casualty reports. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer, more uncertain. My grandmother was a child during the 17 Systems War. Her world was occupied by enemy forces. She watched her parents die. She was put in a camp with other children waiting for execution. He paused. Then a human officer intervened. This officer demanded that the children be released. When her superiors refused, she shared her own food rations with the prisoners. She protected them until the war ended. Lena's heart contracted. I didn't know that story survived. It survived because my grandmother told it to everyone she met. She named her daughter after that officer. And she told me, before she died, that if I ever had the chance to repay that kindness, I should take it. Vorath turned back to Alina. That officer's name was Alina Vance. The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the guards seemed frozen. You saved my grandmother's life, Vorath continued. You didn't have to. She was your enemy, but you saw a child, and you chose compassion over hatred. He stepped toward Alina. That is why I answered your call. That is why I agreed to meet you. Because I wanted to see if the woman from my grandmother's stories was real, and now, Alina asked. Now I know she is. Vorath nodded slowly. I cannot promise you peace. The Dominion is not just me. There are others who will need to be convinced, but I can promise you a chance. A ceasefire, while we discuss terms, and a chance for you to speak to the full Dominion Assembly. Alina felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. That's more than I hoped for. It's more than you deserve, according to some of my advisors. Vorath almost smiled. But my grandmother believed in you, and I believe in her. He extended his hand. Alina took it. The grip was firm and warm. Kaelin watched from the side of the room, hardly daring to breathe. He had come here expecting death or failure. Instead, he was watching something impossible happen. A bridge being built between enemies. "There is one condition," Voreth added. "When you speak to the assembly, you must speak the truth. All of it, the good and the bad. You must acknowledge what the council has done wrong without excuses or justifications. Can you do that?" Alina nodded. "I've been telling uncomfortable truths for 50 years. I'm not going to stop now." "Good." Voreth released her hand. "The assembly meets tomorrow. Rest tonight. You will need your strength." He gestured to the guards, and they led Alina and Kalen to guest quarters. As the door closed behind them, Kalen finally allowed himself to exhale. "That was incredible," he said. "You actually reached him." Lena sat down heavily on the bed. Her old bones ached from the journey. "I reached one person. Tomorrow, I have to reach thousands. But there's hope now. Real hope." Alina looked at this young alien who had believed in her when no one else did. "Yes," she said quietly. "There's hope. Hold on to it, Kalan. Sometimes hope is the only thing that keeps us going." Outside the window, the stars of Dominion space burned cold and distant. But somewhere among them, Alina knew. Peace was waiting to be born. She was the legend who ended wars. Now she's just a name in the Registry Part 5. What legends are made of the Dominion Assembly Chamber was vast beyond anything Alina had imagined. Thousands of representatives filled the tiered seats, species from every corner of conquered and allied space. Their eyes were fixed on the central platform where Alina stood alone. She had never felt so small. She had never felt so powerful. Voroth had introduced her simply. "This is Alina Vance, the human who ended the last great war. She is asked to speak. I have granted her request." Now Alina stood in silence, looking up at the sea of faces. Some were hostile. Some were curious. Most were simply tired. These were people who had been fighting for years. People who had lost family members, friends, entire worlds. They did not want speeches. They wanted an end to their suffering. Alina understood that feeling. She shared it. "Not going to lie to you," she began. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "I'm not going to tell you that the Galactic Council was right and you were wrong. I'm not going to pretend that your pain isn't real or that your anger isn't justified." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not what they expected. 50 years ago, I helped end a war. But the peace that followed was built on lies. The Council promised equality. They promised representation. They promised that the species who had suffered most would be lifted up and given a place at the table. Alina paused. Those promises were broken. Not by accident. The powerful decided that keeping power was more important than keeping their word. Silence. Absolute silence. The Dominion exists because the galaxy failed you. You were pushed to the edges. You were ignored. You were treated as lesser beings despite all the treaties that said otherwise. And when you finally demanded what was owed to you, you were called enemies, terrorists, threats to peace. Alina looked directly at Voreth, then swept her gaze across the entire assembly. "I cannot undo what was done. I cannot bring back the dead or heal the wounds that have been inflicted over generations. But I can do something that no one else in the galaxy seems willing to do. I can tell the truth, and I can apologize." She lowered her head slightly. "On behalf of everyone who benefited from the broken promises, on behalf of the governments that chose convenience over justice, on behalf of my own species, who were part of a system that treated others as inferior, I am sorry, truly, deeply sorry." The chamber erupted. Some representatives shouted in anger. Some shouted in disbelief. Some simply sat in stunned silence. No galactic leader had ever apologized to them. No one had ever acknowledged that their suffering was real and unjust. Voreth raised his hand, and slowly the noise subsided. "Words are easy," a Vorthan representative called out from the upper tiers. "Apologies cost nothing. Why should we believe you?" Alina nodded. "You're right. Words are easy. That's why I'm not just offering words." She turned to face the entire assembly. "I am offering to stay here, in Dominion space, for as long as necessary. I will live among you, work alongside you, and serve as a guarantee that any new agreement will be honored. If the Council breaks its promises again, you will have me as proof that at least one person in the galaxy believed you deserved better. You're offering yourself as a hostage. Someone asked, I'm offering myself as a bridge. Someone who belongs to both worlds and neither. Someone who can speak truth to both sides. Elena's voice grew stronger. I did this once before. I gave 15 years of my life to prove that peace was possible. I will give whatever years I have left to prove it again. Silence fell once more. Then, slowly, a figure rose from the lower seats. An elderly woman, her scales dulled with age, her movements careful and slow. She made her way toward the central platform where Alina stood. Vorath leaned forward. Grandmother. The old woman reached Alina and looked up at her with eyes that held decades of memory. I was 7 years old when the soldiers came to our camp. I was going to die. I had accepted it, and then you appeared. Lena's breath caught in her throat. You remember me? I remember everything. You gave me your food when your own stomach was empty. You stood between us and the soldiers who wanted to kill us. You told them that children were not enemies. The old woman reached out and took Elena's hand. I have waited 60 years to thank you. Tears rolled down Elena's weathered cheeks. I only did what anyone should have done. No, the old woman said. You did what a human does. You chose compassion when hatred would have been easier. That is what your species is capable of. That is why I believe you now. She turned to face the assembly. Her voice was thin with age, but carried clearly through the chamber. I have lived long enough to see my grandchildren fight the same wars I survived. I have buried too many of them. I am tired of death. And I believe this human when she says she wants peace. The old woman looked at Vorath. Give her a chance. For me, Vorath stared at his grandmother for a long moment. Then he rose from his seat and descended to the central platform. The Dominion did not start this war because we wanted to destroy. We started it because we wanted to be heard, to be respected, to be treated as equals. He stood beside Alina. If this human is willing to take responsibility for her galaxy's failures, then perhaps there are others who will do the same. Perhaps peace is possible. He addressed the assembly directly. I propose a ceasefire, immediate and unconditional. During this ceasefire, we will negotiate new terms. Real terms. And Alina Vance will remain among us as a guarantee of good faith. The vote was not unanimous. Some representatives stormed out in anger. Some abstained. But when the count was finished, the majority had voted yes. The ceasefire was approved. Alina sank to her knees on the platform. Overwhelmed by relief and exhaustion, she had done it. Against all odds, she had done it. Caitlin rushed from the observer section to her side. Alina, are you all right? I'm fine, she whispered. Just tired. So very tired. He helped her to her feet. Around them, the assembly was dissolving into a chaos of conversation and debate. But the shooting would stop. At least for now. Vorath approached them. You have surprised me, Alina Vance. I did not think it was possible. Peace is always possible, Alina replied. We just have to be willing to pay the price for it. The weeks that followed were difficult. Negotiations were slow and painful. Old wounds were reopened. Ancient grievances were debated. But the ceasefire held. And slowly, carefully, a new agreement began to take shape. Alina kept her promise. She remained in Dominion space, attending meetings, mediating disputes, building bridges one conversation at a time. She was no longer young enough to do everything herself, but she could teach others. She could show them that enemies were just people who had been hurt too much. Kalen stayed with her. He became the first official Valorian ambassador to the Dominion, carrying Elena's philosophy of compassionate diplomacy into a new generation. His people were saved, and they would never forget the human who had made it possible. Months passed, then years. Alina grew older. Her body weakened, but her spirit remained strong. On a quiet day, a young Dominion child visited the school where Alina sometimes taught. She looked at the old human woman with curious eyes. Who is that? She asked her teacher. The teacher smiled. Her name is Elena Vance. She's a human who came to us a long time ago. She taught us that peace is possible, even between enemies. She taught us that compassion is stronger than hatred. Is she famous? The teacher considered the question. In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. She has no titles anymore. No medals, no monuments. She is just an old woman who chose to spend her final years helping others. The child thought about this. That sounds like the best kind of famous. Yes, the teacher agreed. I think you're right, somewhere in a galactic database. Elena Vance's file remained unchanged. Human, age 94, retired, no special classification. Just a name in a registry among billions of other names, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She had never wanted to be a legend. She had only wanted to help. And in the end, that was the most legendary thing of all.